Our simple building is this delightful 150-year-old stone cottage. So when I draw this, I want to capture these angles, but I also want to capture a sense of three dimensions, that this isn't a cartoon of outlines, that it's a three-dimensional object. We don't want to draw just one line where we actually need two lines to show depth in something. Another good point to observe is that the roof and guttering overhangs quite a large amount from the corners. And on this closest corner, it's a bit trickier again, and we'll just need to observe more carefully there. I'm going to start with this corner and then try and rough out something of these lines, and then put the downpipe in and then move across this way. I'm keeping my lines fairly light at the moment. It can be helpful sometimes to get a sense of the angles by using our pen. So I want to get this downpipe in just because it covers these lines here. Now with these vertical lines, it's good to try and keep them as vertical as we can. As we draw window spaces, try and get a sense of the proportion. So this is a sort of a tall, narrowish window. That will do for now. Now we have this doorway, and I'm looking at this, and it needs to be less, well, it's about the same as that distance actually, between this line and the pipe, between there and there. Now we can't see the top of the doorway because this awning covers it, and the awning lines up in the perspective angle, so it's best to see this almost as a straight line. So with the door, I don't want to let it get too wide. Now this distance from here to here, although we know it's the same as this, is actually quite a lot less. And so with these little awning supports, we want to try and show them as having not just one side, but having depth as well. Putting just a dot in where we want a line to go is a helpful way to just then step back and think, is that quite where I want it? And now we can get a sense of how far this line has to come. We won't worry too much about the detail of the windows yet. Let's block in some of the rest of the lines. Need to get a sort of a nice thin wedgy shape in here. So let's get this wall in place now. It's good to avoid drawing a hard line at the bottom of buildings because they don't usually end up touching the ground with a line as straight or smooth as we get in other parts of the building. Now in this case there's grass up against the side of the building. So now we come to the roof and chimney. The roof joins up here. I like to see where that lines up with what I've already drawn. And so it lines up just about here. And it's actually not very high. Even though we know this roof would look quite high if we were looking straight on, from this close looking up, we see a lot less of it. And so this distance here is probably about that distance there. And it goes not to the very tip, it goes to about here. And they're the little details that it's good to notice. And that here it doesn't go to here, it actually goes to here. They're the things that help make our drawings look like real buildings. And now we've got our chimney. And again, I line it up with things I've already drawn. This line is kind of going to be about here. Now this chimney has quite a big overhang with this section. So it's important to see that and to draw it, because that adds to the interest of this little architectural element. And again, noticing things that these don't line up horizontally, they angle at the same perspective pattern that we get for all lines going in this direction. So now we have our building basically drawn. So what details do we want to add? Now it's actually next to a service station, in which I don't really want to draw, but I'm going to do this little hedge here. And it adds a nice different texture of lines to the ones that we've got otherwise. Notice that the grass we draw up here is just little dots, because it has to appear smaller than the grass that appears closer. Now we have a little veranda. This is actually the rear of the building. There is a veranda at the front, and we'll do that in another video. What more do we want to draw? I think we want to give a little more detail to the windows. It can be very effective to use lines or hatching to indicate shadows behind these old-fashioned windows with their small panes. If we do need to work out a technique and take enough time and effort to keep them looking nice and straight. Because there's something pressed up against the glass in this window, it doesn't look the same. So I'm going to draw it the way it is here, just for interest. And now we better add a bit more tone into the doorway. Now this side of this strut is in shade as well. So what more do we want to do? Well, we could put, I think, some more hatching into this under the eave section, both to show the dark color, but also to show the shade. But the other thing is, what do we want to do about showing that there's stonework? Now, we could very carefully map out this drawing so that we put all of these stones. If they were bricks, it would be pretty impossible to do it at the right scale. While I don't want to do it for all of them, I think it would be nice to indicate in some way. And so I'm going to just draw some of the lines. The tricky thing is, even though we're not going to draw all the lines joining up, it has to look as though they could join up if they were all extended. And as you can see, I can show a little more detail with sort of shadows and little irregularities in the stones that are closer, because that will help make this side of the building look closer to me than that side. And I think that will do for that. So let's just now put this hatching for under the eaves. Always good to keep standing back and having another look and saying, what more can I do? Look, I might just give a little indication of some more stonework and stone texture on some of these stones. Now look at the difference, even little things such as putting these brackets on and making sure we curve them around the downpipe, how it helps create a sense of roundedness of the pipe. And if you remember, when I first drew this downpipe, I really made a mess of the lines in the bottom half. But now that the whole drawing has finished, you hardly notice it because there is so much more other stuff happening. Resist the urge to, I have to start again. Occasionally that can be a wise thing to do. But in my experience, what we're so worried about at the start, we hardly notice at the end. You'll notice what I've done is I've tried to soften this line so it's not like a smooth straight line. A little dot just to indicate a little indent between the blocks. These are the ways we can bring an element of realism, and by doing all our first lines lightly, it does give us the option to play around with them more. Notice that by darkening this little section here of this veranda support, it pushes this part forward a little bit. It helps to pop forward this wall, which helps to strengthen the sense of 3 dimensions. I think the only thing I want to do now is to indicate some of these lines very lightly. I really only see these closer ones. The important thing to just be aware of is what is the angle. And I think our simple cottage is finished. We could have drawn it much more simply and just done heavy straight lines, drawn a box first and added some things, but by going a little bit lightly, we give ourselves the opportunity to start to create the effect of what we see as well as the outline of what we see. And if you're a beginner drawer, learning not to rush to draw the outline, but to create, if you like, the skeleton, the bones, to draw the effect of what we're seeing, whether it's a tree or a block of stone, is a tremendous start to developing a technique to do realistic drawings of whatever we're drawing. And there's one more thing I want to do now before I finish, because I've just seen it. And please notice that even though I'm using a 0.3mm pen, for the whole drawing I can get quite a different range of effects with my lines. And this is why it's good to find one or two pens and use them all the time, because we get to learn what we can do with this particular pen. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope you enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun drawing it. If you want to have a go drawing yourself, I've posted this photo on my YouTube channel community page. So if you want to have a go drawing it yourself, I think that would be a great thing to do. But can I suggest you don't watch my video, pausing it and starting, pausing and starting, and drawing along with me as I draw, because that doesn't teach you to do anything but to copy my lines, and you will never learn to do your own creative drawings that way. Instead, watch my video, maybe watch it a few times, understand what I'm saying, and then turn my video off and do your best to draw from this reference the same drawing. Then compare it with mine if you want, and work out, okay, are there things about the video's drawing I prefer to mine, and how can I create that in my own drawing? If you do it this way, you are still developing your skill, your ability to look at a reference and make creative choices about where to put the line, how to put the line. And that's always the hard part of a drawing. Not the copying skills we need to develop so much as the creative thinking skills. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. But however you draw, whatever you draw, whenever you draw it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.